Well, Mitch, we survived what you dubbed a Freaky Friday on Friday the 13th in week 3. Now we're heading into the heart of the schedule here.
Yeah, we saw some things you would expect on a Friday the 13th, but in the end, it all kind of worked out maybe the way we thought it would. But still, that crystal ball getting a little bit clearer for some teams, but boy, it's still some muddy waters for others.
Time to separate the contenders from the pretenders. Let's get into week 4. Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome, everyone, to View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined once again, as always, by Mitch Stormer. Mitch, here we go. Heading into the heart of the football season, week 4. It's time to kind of, like you said, get that crystal ball, shine it up, and kind of see what the future holds for some of our area teams here.
Yeah, 3 weeks in now, so that's a third of the season, which is just a weird thing to think about. But it's the storylines are there are some that are playing out the way that we thought that they would, but we thought maybe week 3 would answer some questions about some teams, and I feel like we did, but maybe not necessarily in a good way. And so, yeah, when we start looking at kind of how the season's going to play out and contenders and pretenders, I think there's teams on each side of those two lists that maybe we didn't expect.
Yeah, maybe as we get more answers, maybe we get a few more questions along the way. And that's kind of the fun of how a football season unravels. But a lot of great stuff to talk about today. Mitch, normally we jump right in and we talk viewpoints. We're going to hold off on the viewpoints till the end of the show. Flip the format up a little bit. We got a little fun game to look ahead and kind of see what the future looks like for some of our teams that maybe haven't jumped out to the best start, but maybe we see some things in their future where there's some potential, maybe a potential playoff run here. So we'll save that for the end, but we'll get in. We'll talk about week 3 that was, previewing week 4, of course. But Mitch, before we get into all that, you know who we got to thank. Tell them who powers the pod.
Yeah, the listeners, they know. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the cost you're probably used to. They offer brand names such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information.
Mitch, I talked a little bit to Cal Breedlove earlier today, and man, he's pumped. And I got to give him a shout out and give a shout out to, Abby, who we work with at Breedloves, and to all the great people that work for Breedloves, because man, you've seen it. They've been all over it. I mean, these helmets are getting shipped out so quick, and it's great. It's so fun to see, our award winners posing with their helmets and, being happy to get them. So we're loving it. It's great. And we're giving out another helmet. We're shipping out another helmet later in this episode. So stick around for that.
And as always, Greg, my warmth is powered by Breedloves tonight on this episode.
You got that beautiful view from the West quarter zip. Thanks to Breedloves. We love it. And speaking of merch, Mitch, I've been hearing that the merch is being bagged up, ready to be shipped out. So if you're listening to this and you ordered some View from the West gear, hopefully it's arriving at your doorstep real soon. You can get it out there into the bleachers, onto the sidelines, and we're excited for that. Of course, if you like what we're hearing here, you can find us obviously right here on Podbean or any podcast platform. You can also find us on YouTube, on X, on Instagram. We're posting game highlights. We're posting final scores all the time. Mitch, you're running the X show every Friday night. You're keeping all the Twitterverse, I guess not Twitterverse, whatever we call it these days, the universe that is on the X social media platform. You're killing it. You're keeping people up to date all the time. And the new look graphics, I love it. They're going over well. You can find those there. You can also find us on Instagram. We're posting some, show clips and also some highlights. And so we love it. All right, Mitch, I did a little math today, which is not really my strong suit, but thanks to the Seuss and thanks to Friday Night Drive, they had listed there are 112 undefeated teams remaining in the state between 11-man and 8-man. So I did a little research. In our area, we have 5 undefeated teams left in 8-man. We have 11 undefeated teams left in our 11-man ranks. Western Big Six has 1, that being Quincy. You have the Three Rivers Athletic Conference has 2. The Lincoln Land Conference has 6. They have 3 on each division. And the NUIC has 2, being Lena Winslow and Dupec. So a lot of great teams in that mix, but we'll keep talking down the way. I think there's a lot of sneaky teams in here that maybe suffered an early season loss, but get ready. You're going to hear a lot about them. I got a feeling it's on some teams.
Yeah, well, and like I said at the Open, it's when we make those kind of 2 lists of maybe, I don't want to say contenders and pretenders, but just surprise teams or teams that are maybe doing better than we thought or not. It's just some of these teams that I'll say Elmwood Brimfield, right? Sitting there, one of those undefeated LLC teams. West Carroll, one of those undefeated 8-man teams. And maybe some teams that have been in that conversation in the past, but maybe are now on the other side of it, sitting at 0 wins or 1 win. So, yeah, it's 3 weeks in, man. It's been crazy.
Yeah. So let's get into the week that was in week 3. And of course, we're looking ahead to week 4. Some big matchups, some more answers, hopefully, coming along the way with some of these matchups. We're going to learn about some of these teams here in week 4, I think. Let's start in the Western Big Six. Quincy gets the big win, 48-7 over Rock Island. Quincy scores touchdowns on their first 7 possessions, including all 6 in the first half. So to say they were effective, they were rocking and rolling in this one in their Big Six opener. Braden Little, 21 of 23. 21 of 23. I said that correctly. 320 yards, 5 touchdowns. Big nights from Rice, Hammers, Clay were the big receivers for him. Hammers goes for 100 yards and a touchdown. Rico Clay, 6 receptions for 120 yards. Just a great effort all the way around for this Quincy offense. We say it every week, but they're efficient. They're same story every week. They're getting the job done.
Yeah, and a quick shout out on this game to Don O'Brien for sending us stats right after the game. He was there. He does great coverage down in Quincy. Yeah, you give Little's numbers 21 to 23 for 320 and 5. It just seems like he does that every week. And it's not easy. I know I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easy. But boy, he's so impressive. This entire team is just a collection of who's who on both sides of the ball. We talk a lot about the offense, but how about Ben Schelp and Andreas Rice on the defensive side? 5 tackles each in this one. Schelp has 30 tackles on the season. 3 games in.
Yep.
Go back to this side of the ball. Braden Little is over 1,000 yards already. 3 games into the year. I mean, it's insane. It's crazy the numbers that this Quincy team has been putting up.
Okay, the high-end consistency for Braden Little. Mitch, one of these weeks, he's got to be our Breedlove's Player of the Week, right? He was our Player of the Year a year ago, and I don't know. It seems like every week, unfortunately, this week is the same. There is somebody else we'll talk about in a little bit that maybe edged him out, but man, he's got to get one, right?
We've been giving out 12 of these now, and and arguably the best player that we cover has not won one. But yeah, hey, not to tease it, not to give it away. We'll see what happens. Who we're giving this helmet to in week 3, but it's that consistency that Little and this team bring every single week. And that's why they've won so many games in a row. That's why they're the top dog in the Western Big Six. And so here in this game against Rocky, their first conference game of the year, obviously getting off on the right foot.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting looking through, shout out to Quincy, to Coach Little and their coaching staff for always being great, always being generous and giving us stats, giving us up to week totals, throughout the season. Interesting note, I thought that Quincy has not allowed a single point in the third quarter this season, which I think is interesting to me. What stands out to me about that is, right, like a lot of times you build up maybe a two score lead going into the half, and maybe some teams coming out of the break, they're refreshed, they're ready to go. They feel like they might still be in it if they get that opening drive and score. And Quincy shuts them down immediately, goes to work on offense, putting up points, right? You know what I mean? As a way to stall out any momentum going into the second half. It just seems like that's significant.
Well, it's a credit to their depth too, right? You
Yep.
know, that you look at their scores, 40-12, 42-13, 48-7. You know, that second team defense is probably getting in there in the third quarter. And you can see that consistency just again remains the same no matter who's on the field for the Blue Devils. So yeah, it's going to make them an incredibly tough team to beat, not only in this conference, but making another run in that, very, very tough 7-8 playoff bracket.
Yep. Well, they'll have a huge matchup coming up in week 4. We'll talk about that in a minute. That will be against Moline. The Moline Maroons get the 51-21 win over Geneseo. This was a matchup that, you and I and people we've talked to were really interested to see how this one played out, because they felt like maybe Moline and Geneseo were the next two, right below Quincy. And so Moline makes a statement here, winning by 30. They were trailing 21-14 in the second quarter. Moline would take a 24-21 lead at the half. And then in the second, they scored 27 unanswered points for the convincing win. So just a, great effort here from Moline.
Yeah, we talked about this on the Instant Reacts that we were intrigued by this game. You had Geneseo coming in, having two pretty dominant defensive performances, but maybe not against the greatest of competitions. You had Moline coming in at 1-1, but having played really, really good competition. And so to see which team would be on the better end of those 2 weeks, it was Moline by a long shot. Their running game was dominant in this game. Adrian Cooper had a big day, 98 yards on the ground, which may not seem like a ton, but 2 scores. And he blocked a field goal, Greg, that Corbin Schnell returned for a touchdown in the very first play of the fourth quarter to really put this game on ice. So, I mean, that's a hashtag helmet watch performance if I've ever seen one. So Moline asserted themselves in this game as really that. Now Sterling's right there too, and that game will play out eventually. But like you mentioned, with Moline maybe at the moment being that next team knocking on Quincy's door, we'll find that answer out pretty soon here this week.
Yeah, some positives to take away for Geneseo. Kai Weinzerl went for just over 120 total yards and a touchdown. Jackson McAvoy ran in 2 touchdowns as a quarterback. So some positives there. Geneseo struggles down the stretch in this one, but played really competitive football for a while. And I think they're going to win some football games here down the way in the Western Big Six. So we'll get to those in a minute here. A couple more games from the Western Big Six. Sterling gets the 27-26 win over United Township. Special teams looking extra special for the Sterling Golden Warriors. Huge plays in this game from Caden Phillips, returning 2 punts for touchdowns, and the Warriors blocked the game-tying extra point with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left to play. Mitch, did you see some of the highlights that the Sterling Golden Warriors posted on X? Man, these highlight runs from Phillips were electric. Fun to watch.
I don't know if it was Golden Warrior TV or the high school account. I'm not sure. But yeah, they posted, edited clips of both of those punt returns. You got Jim Spencer going nuts as always. Great plays. And I had mentioned on the Instant Reacts that in the post-game interview, Coach Welch for UT had said specifically that they had a game plan to not kick it to Phillips. And, things happen in games like this, and he ends up getting 2 chances at it and returns them. So, I was I was really impressed, and I have been for 3 weeks now with this UT team, right? They played incredibly hard, had a late lead against LaSalle Peru in week 1, ended up falling just short. They get the big win in week 2, and then they played an excellent game here against Sterling. Christian Patterson, their quarterback, was lights out. I mean, he had a run in the 3rd quarter into the 4th quarter that he was just it was just incredible play. And you could hear it in Coach Welch's voice, a range of emotions from if it's frustration with the officiating or just frustration of not, being in the win column in this game, to being incredibly proud of his team and the fight that they showed, and really just excitement too to keep working at this team and doing those things that it takes to win these ball games. And I think they'll get there, because for 3 weeks now they've played really, really well, and maybe one of those one-win teams that we talk about later, that has a lot to look forward to still.
Yeah, I think that this United Township program, as we've watched it the last, this year and last year especially, and it's different, right? It's different teams, because they were a very veteran team a year ago. Now they're on the younger end of things. But either way, they're grinding week in and week out. And man, they're so close. And I feel for them. I feel for Nick Welch and for the players, because they're right there and they're just coming up short. If they could keep their heads up, stay focused week in and week out, there's a lot of talent there, like you referenced, with Peterson and with Navarrete at running back. There's a lot of pieces, and they're getting that experience, and they're learning through some tough losses here. But I think that it's not the start they wanted, but there's still a lot of football left for this program this season.
Retraction on my part. I said Patterson. That is a typo on my part. So sorry to Christian.
All good.
Had the wrong key. Yeah, had the wrong key there. One thing, just to switch to the other side of the ball. Some history in this one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sterling head coach John Schlemmer becomes the all-time winningest head coach in Sterling history. This was his 97th win as the head coach of Sterling. So really, really cool moment after the game in this one too.
Yeah, there's another video that Sterling put out there this past or a couple days ago with the team after they kind of break down the huddle, and Coach Schlemmer kind of starts to walk away, and you hear a player say, no, wait. And they grab a game ball and they give it to him, and they all kind of go nuts. Like, really cool moment to, celebrate the record there. And that's quite an accomplishment, 97 wins. No one's ever done, that many at Sterling High School. So a proud tradition there. And for John Schlemmer to be on top of the list is really cool, So congratulations to him, and congratulations to the Golden Warriors. That's a thrilling win, and a much needed one, right? They were struggling coming out of the non-conference schedule. And so to get that one, I think, gives you some positive momentum here as we move down the way. Mitch, speaking of positive momentum, how about your Morrison Mustangs from the Northwest Upstate Illini go on the road to Western Big Six opponent Galesburg and get the win, 31-14. Great win for the Mustangs. We had a lot of questions about them coming into this one, and Galesburg had just come off a huge win over Bartonville Limestone, and it's Morrison who, does the job. And, what an effort here, holding Galesburg to 14 points after what they did the week before with Jamar Range being our player of the week and putting up all those rushing stats. It's quite an effort here from the Mustangs.
I will be the first one to admit that I was surprised at this. I really was. Just to see the updates and the scores rolling in from this, it just sounded like Morrison kind of got back to their roots, not passing the ball, controlling the line of scrimmage, controlling the time of possession, and just running the football, and look where it got them. So, we talked about this on the Instant Reacts too, on, the size difference of these two schools. Morrison's enrollment right around 286, Galesburg at 1242. And we know that always doesn't correlate. But, this is 2 years in a row now that we've seen smaller schools go in and beat a Western Big Six school, with Newman being the other one last year. So, that's why you play these games. It's good to see fun matchups that we wouldn't normally see, and then results like this and results like Newman and Rock Island last year are why you put two teams on the field to see who would win. So, yeah, exciting game for Morrison to get back in the win column on the road. Good win at Galesburg here as they get back now into NUIC play.
Yeah, like I said, we had a lot of questions about maybe their line play and the yardage they gave up against Lena Winslow, or just, the way that they, weren't able to get much going against Galena. And so this is a huge bounce back. And I think, again, what really impresses me is their defensive effort. They were able to slow down a rushing attack when they had struggled to do that, so to get that positive momentum, like you said, headed back into Northwest Upstate Illini play is huge. We'll talk more about the NUIC down the road in a minute here, but let's look at week 4 in the Western Big Six. Geneseo goes on the road to United Township, Sterling at Galesburg, Quincy at Moline, and the one non-conference game, Rock Island at Bradley Bourbonnais. So, we talked about two programs who stumbled out of the gates here in the Western Big Six. Geneseo and United Township fell short in week 3. Now looking at week 4, here's an opportunity for one of those teams to bounce back and grab a win.
Yeah. I'm almost more intrigued by Geneseo at UT than I am Quincy at Moline. I've been so impressed with how UT has played, and they've got the one win and obviously 2 close losses, and you've got Geneseo who's got the 2 wins and I call it what it is, a bad loss to Moline. So I think this is one of those games, Greg, that we just talked about. Maybe we'll have more answers than we do questions. One of these 2 teams will kind of assert themselves over the other. But going back to Quincy and Moline, I mean, this is, one of the games that we had circled preseason as a game that we thought could determine who would win the conference. Certainly we all think Quincy will win the conference. But Moline has been really, really impressive, and I think they are the true top contender at the moment. So to get this game at home, the way that they've been playing, should be a really exciting game. You mentioned you would love to be there shooting this game. We'll see if your wishes come true.
Yeah, Matt Randazzo, if you're listening.
Yeah, right. Which he is. He's walking or running or something listening to this, but yeah, it's a marquee matchup in the Western Big Six here in week 4, and really looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, I think it was a marquee matchup. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, we kind of circled that one. But now I think the way that Moline just won over Geneseo, I think, and going back, the way that Moline has played in the non-conference schedule, they've been battle tested, right? They've played a really tough schedule so far, and they've answered the call, and they're sitting in a really good spot here. I think they're riding a lot of momentum heading into a game against a great Quincy team.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. I went back and looked at last year. This was only a 34-27 win for Quincy last year, one of the closest games that they played all season.
Yep.
But I think you just had a really good point. If this game gets tight, Moline has the upper hand in that scenario because Quincy hasn't been put in a tight situation just yet.
Yeah.
Moline battled hard with Summit in week 1. And certainly played a tough game in week 2 against Bennett Academy. So I would give Moline the upper hand in that scenario where it's a tight game close because they've been through it. But how does Moline stop the 8-headed monster of Quincy on both sides of the ball? I think they'll have to control that a little bit on the defensive side to stop this Quincy attack.
Yeah. And Quincy, Moline has been battle tested this season, but I will say overall, Quincy's the more experienced group. I mean, they're probably the most experienced group in the conference overall. And so any matchup they go into, they've seen a lot of football. These players together have seen a lot of football going back last year into the state quarterfinal run, and the way that they marched through the regular season a year ago. So overall,
and they win. And they win.
They win.
I mean,
they win. Yeah. So Quincy making the road trip to Moline, and coming along with him is Don O'Brien, correct? Did he confirm he's making that trip?
Did he confirm? I'm not sure.
I thought I read that in the message.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll yes, he did say that. So yeah, Don will be in the house. So that'll be, again, great game. Really looking forward to seeing this game But does Moline do live streams? I know QC Sports don't have this game certainly, but will there be video of this one?
That's a good question. I feel like they have in the past. I assume they do. But yeah, certainly you can listen to it live on QC Sportsnet. Grant Dahlstrom will be on the call. They'll have a write-up at the end of the weekend as well. That's also a very valuable resource.
Yeah, I should say I flip through all of their broadcasts on Fridays. I just have the tabs open and I just click, if there's a break in a game or maybe one gets out of hand, I just flip to the next one. So they're doing a great job this year.
Yeah, awesome. One more game to talk about here. Rock Island goes on the road to Bradley Bourbonnais. Mitch, we talked about the tough non-conference slate for Moline, but overall the tough non-conference and just the tough start for the season for this Rock Island group. They opened with Minooka, who's sitting at 3-0 right now. They played in week 2 against Dunlap, who is one of the top teams in the Peoria area, who's sitting at 2-1. They played Quincy last week. This week, Bradley Bourbonnais. In week 5 is Moline. So what a gauntlet to start the season for Rock Island. I'll be honest, I had high hopes for them, and I think that there's still a lot of talent here, but they've just run into it's been a gauntlet of a schedule to start, and they've struggled.
Yeah, Bradley Bourbonnais ranked in the top 10 of 7A. They're undefeated, 3-0 coming out of the Southwest Valley. I want to say they have a really good quarterback. They certainly have really good talent all across the field, but to your point, it's hard to find a schedule that's harder than Rock Island's has been these first 4 weeks now. So, the results may not be where they want them, but boy, are they getting really, really good experience playing in these games, and it'll pay dividends in the long run. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see if you can get through this week, stay healthy. What do you have? What do you have in the tank for this rivalry game against Moline? We'll talk about that down the road. But could that be a launching pad for the rest of your season? Because you faced kind of the hardest opponents in the Big Six right there early on, and certainly had a tough non-conference slate. So interested to see how that plays out. This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
Shouldn't financial advice focus on you? I can help you plan for your financial future, from protection to saving to retirement. I'm Nate Neighbor, your Modern Woodmen representative. Call me at 309-233-2656 or find me on the Modern Woodmen website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodmen representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodmen of America, touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodmen of America.
View from the West podcast is also sponsored by the Cupcake Cartel. Gourmet cupcakes that are made to order. Over 40 flavors, including wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, and Oreo. Perfect for weddings, birthdays, showers, fundraisers, or any event. You can find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. We thank them for their support. All right, should we move into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference? We'll start in the Rock Division. Mercer County gets the win 56-41. A shootout game here. Took a long time to play out because there was a lot of passing, a lot of scoring, and Ty Taylor was in Orion for a long time on Friday.
Yeah, he was very adamant about how long that game took. I was listening to that broadcast. But he saw a good one. He saw a lot of a pair of historic performances, Greg.
Yeah.
Let's start with Merco. Obviously, they get the win. Big part of that, probably the biggest part, Mason Gray, a school record 371 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's getting it done.
Yeah.
That's big boy football right there. So, like I said, a school record. So great performance from Mason Gray. That whole offensive line there really creating the space. But this was a game Mirco needed, and they answered the call.
So shout out to Jenna Miner from WQAD. She had the great video for the score, and I heard her telling the story on the show on Friday night that when she walked in to get highlights, Mason Gray was scoring a touchdown. When she was there, he scored a touchdown on the highlights. And then when she was walking out to her car, he scored another touchdown. So
That's how it's done.
Yeah.
That's an easy night.
Exactly. That's the way you like it as a videographer on the sidelines. So Mason Gray, like you said, 371 yards, 5 touchdowns. Mitch, we're sending a helmet to Mercer County. Ty Taylor called it out in the broadcast at WRMJ, saying, send this man a helmet. It's going there. It's going to Mercer County High School. Congratulations to Mason Gray. What an effort. You are our Breed Loves Player of the Week. Shout out to Jenna Miner again for the video, the great video. She had they actually interviewed him live on the show on Friday night. So a fun story from that interview, he actually broke the record held by Mercer County assistant coach Matt Dawson. And after the game, Dawson brought it up to Gray, and immediately Gray said that he apologized, but then he said, no, not really, coach, not really. So
yeah, no.
Sorry, not really sorry. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, I think I put a tweet out. I don't think he was up to 334 or something that, put the hashtag helmet watch. And that was right around that Ty had said that or right after it. But yeah, with 371 and 5, that'll get it done. That's a helmet. No question.
Yep. But Mitch, this was not the only record to break, to fall that night or on Friday night in Orion. Tell us about the Chargers in the record books.
Yeah, so junior quarterback Cale Filler breaks the Orion school record for all-time passing yards. He threw for 281 in this game with 4 touchdowns. So a valiant effort from this Charger offense to kind of keep pace with Mirco. In the end, it was Mirco who pulled away. But to break a school record for an all-time passing record as a junior, that's some serious stuff. So he's going to shatter that record. He's going to set his own standard. That will probably stand for quite a while. So yeah, congrats to Cale on a great career thus far and a great performance here on Friday, despite the loss.
Yeah, overall tough night for Orion, but a great performance there again by Cale Filler. Mercer County really jumped out to a quick lead. Orion was able to put some points on the board, but they never really got back into it. Overall, you've seen it the last couple weeks. Orion can score. Orion can hang with teams offensively, but man, on the defensive side of the ball, they just struggle to really get those stops, and that ends up being the difference. You saw it against Monmouth-Roseville. You saw it again in this one with Mercer County and Mason Gray really having success on the ground. So there's a lot of talent there in Orion, but I think it's just a part of it's a numbers game too, right? We've talked a lot about they're just short numbers, and I think that really you see that on the defensive side of the ball where they just get worn down. And these teams, really are able to run on them. But overall, focusing on the Mercer County side of things, great effort from them. A great win for this Green Dragon. What am I talking about?
Green Dragon. What year is it?
I don't know.
Shout out to the Lido fan base.
Yeah. But overall, for Mercer County, just a great win, a needed win for the Golden Eagles as they move down the way in this Three Rivers Athletic Conference. A lot of intriguing matchups they have down the way. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's keep moving down to another great rushing attack here. We talked about Mercer County's efforts. How about Newman's efforts? I know you're shocked, Mitch. Newman had a great rushing attack. Newman gets the win 41-13 over Erie Prophetstown. This was my second game of the night on Friday. I got there. It was 14-7 at the break. Daniel Kelly scores right away early in the third quarter. And man, it was like the floodgates opened because it was just a rushing attack that Erie Prophetstown had no answer for. And like I joked, I know you're shocked that Newman has a rushing attack that is dangerous. But man, listen to some of these numbers. They had 12 different ball carriers. 12 different guys carrying the ball for them. So you had Briar Ivy for 58 yards and 3 touchdowns. Cody McBride, 64 yards and a touchdown. Daniel Kelly, 81 yards and a touchdown. Oh, yeah, and he had 13 tackles on defense. So Daniel Kelly being a menace on both sides of the ball. Matthew Blackert, 32 yards and a touchdown. But just, I mean, I was there watching it, and it was just remarkable.
Yeah, with a rushing attack like this and the defense that they've been playing, it's very reminiscent of Newman teams of old. Certainly, Mike LeMay would know something about that, being a part of 4 of those teams. But I was texting coach, and just it's good to see them have consistency on offense. That was something that they lacked last year. The defense has always been good. The defense had, those 27 turnovers last year, but it was just kind of the offense that was the missing link. So now they seem to have that. I mean, they've got 12 ball carriers apparently to pick from. So keep defenses on their toes, certainly. And just the even mix of distribution there. No one runner had a ton more yards than the other. Maybe Dan Kelly was the leading back, but yeah, it's good to see Newman back in the fold here, and I think they're going to be, maybe that top contender now to compete with Rock Ridge for this division crown. If they keep playing the way that they're playing right now.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember is they'll probably end up in Class 1A for the state playoffs, and I think they'll be a tough out for a lot of 1A schools the way they're playing right now. So something to think about moving forward. A couple stories before we move along. So on Friday on the Instant Reacts pod, we saw the X post from Brian Stocking that Newman had now won 15 straight meetings of these two schools. And I something didn't seem right with it. But as it turns out, I know you're shocked. Brian Stocking was right. I was mistaken. Right. The game I was thinking about was 2015 in week 5. Erie Prophetstown had been on a stretch of playoff runs with head coach Chuck Milam, and they had some really talented teams around that time. They were on the road in Sterling on a Saturday. It was 26-20. They fell short, but it was a back and forth game. I remember because Dan Pearson was there. So, of course, the game was great, and Pearson's video was great. And he'd sent it to me for highlights for WQAD, but I was thinking that Erie Prophetstown had come away with that win, but no, it was Newman got him, edged him out by a touchdown in that one. Shout out to Coach Chuck Milam. I actually saw him on the sideline, talked to him briefly, and he now has a talented wide receiver in the mix for the Erie Prophetstown Panthers. And Mitch, I saw Erie assistant principal Brian Howell. He was my freshman baseball coach at Marquette.
How about that?
I haven't seen him in probably 25 years or more. Well, since the last time that he was at, last day of school, my freshman year, probably. So
yeah, aging yourself now, Greg.
So there you go. So shout out to Brian Howell. Good to see him on the sideline.
Great.
So, all right.
Yeah.
One more game here. Rock Ridge gets the win, 48-27 over Riverdale. This was the first game I started at, so we're working in reverse here. But a big night for Jacob Freiermuth. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and a pick 6, 3 touchdown passes for Cullen Schweigen. Another great effort from him. So overall, great effort from Rock Ridge. Riverdale hung around in this one. They played tough. They actually scored on their first play of the game, their first possession. They went up top and found a wide receiver open, punched it in. So there's a lot of talent in this Riverdale squad. I talked to Guy Derricks before the game. Good to see him. And we'll talk more about Riverdale down the way here in our, exercise at the end of the show. But a lot of talent for Riverdale. They come up short in this one. Rock Ridge continues to roll along here.
Yeah, it's a good bounce back win for Rock Ridge coming off that loss to Princeton. But and they ran away with this one. Riverdale scored late a couple times, so showed that they have quite a bit of fight in them. They're not going to give up, so it made this game a little closer. But this was all Rock Ridge all night. But yeah, like you said, Freiermuth, Schweigen back on the right track for Rock Ridge as they move forward here looking forward to a big game against EP in week 4.
Yep. Another shout out to Tom and Katie Hassan. Always good to see them on the Rock Ridge sidelines. And I have to say, Katie Hassan does an amazing job posting every scoring play on the Rock Ridge social media accounts. Do you follow Rock Ridge on X, Mitch? You're getting all the updates. She basically writes my scripts for me, which I love.
Now, see, I do. I don't think they follow us, though. I want to say that the Rock Ridge Athletics account does not follow View from the West, so you might have to follow up on that note.
Okay. Well, she does an amazing job. They do an amazing job because, like I said, I'm able to get the numbers and the plays, right away as I'm writing scripts. So I love the attention to detail. So, all right, let's look at week 4. Erie Prophetstown goes on the road to Rock Ridge. Orion goes on the road to Sterling Newman. Riverdale is at Mercer County. I will say that, that Rock Ridge Erie Prophetstown game stands out to me as, can Erie Prophetstown bounce back? We were, talked a lot about them, and they kind of ran into a buzzsaw that was Newman, but it doesn't get much easier here in Rock Ridge. That's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, I think so too. Certainly probably the spotlight game of the 3, just to see how both of those teams respond from week 3 games. But yeah, can Merco keep it going against a Riverdale team that's hungry for wins? They're hosting that game, Merco is, and then you got Newman. How does their defense hold up against a big time passing attack that Orion brings out? So yeah, some intrigue here in week 4 to watch for. Can I circle back for one thing, Greg?
Yes, of course.
You mentioned the writing of your scripts, your highlights.
Yes.
Can we talk about how we used to do that?
Yeah, okay.
Because that's getting it right off of Twitter seems a lot easier than how we used to do it.
It is.
So
yeah, it is.
So back in the day, for those who are listening, and we've probably talked about some of this before. Nowadays, and Greg, you can speak to this. Even just getting the video to the studio is monumentally easier than what it used to be.
Much different. But I can drive much slower now down the interstate.
Right. How it was back in, when Greg and I worked together in the early 2000s, was we would be on the road and we would go to these games, and I would have a notebook, and if a big play happened and Greg was filming it, I would have to write down the timestamp of the film.
Yep.
And what had happened.
Yep.
I'd have to have a roster. I'd have to do math on the yardage. I'd have to do the whole bit. So you'd have this convoluted timeline of notes.
Scribbled notepad with time codes.
Scribbled notes that you absolutely could not read.
Yep.
And it's 9:45 at night, and we're flying down 88 or 80 or whatever to get back to Davenport, to get back to the studio. I'm calling Brian Stocking.
That's right.
Sitting at his computer, fielding my phone call, and I am thinking of this script in a car going 80 miles an hour to try and get there in time so we could drop off this film. Yep. And I am trying to creatively make this script up. And Stocking, of course, polished it up. But nowadays, like you just mentioned, you just got it right off of the X feed and it was done for you, and you get to upload your film straight from the parking lot. But
yeah,
I'm aging myself, but that's not how it used to be back in the day.
No, it is crazy how technology has changed that, because the scramble to get back, and you could edit, you could stay and edit remotely, but it involved keeping a live truck there and getting a live signal back to wherever, if depending on where the football field was at, could you get a live shot from whoever, wherever team you were at, depending on how far away you were. So it was always kind of a random draw. But now it's just a matter of, you connect to a Wi-Fi signal, send it back. And I will say, Mitch, without you with me on the sidelines, I am much less organized as far as what plays I get, how many yards they were, who scored. I always end up doing that as I'm editing, which is not nearly as convenient. So I need you to come back and,
Well, it sounds like you're cheating off of the Rock Ridge Twitter feed, but
I am.
It's not always that easy, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie, again. So, all right, let's jump into the track Mississippi side of things. Monmouth Roseville gets the win 24-21 over Kewanee. This was a game we looked at and we thought it would be pretty equal teams battling it out. And boy, did that play out that way. Monmouth Roseville's Nick Houston runs it in from 3 yards out on a 4th and goal with about 3:30 left in the game. Those were the only 7 points in the second half. So what a battle in this one, defensive slugfest here. Titans make a couple of big 4th quarter stops against the Boilermakers to seal the victory. It's the first 3-0 start for Mercer County, or for Monmouth Roseville in school history. So great start for them.
I can't believe that. I saw that on Friday. I I would have to go back and see who they've played in their first 3 weeks. Maybe they ran into Princeton or somebody, but yeah, first 3-0 start. So congrats to the Titans. Been really impressed with how they've played this year. Certainly this was their closest game that they've played, but the names that we keep calling. Peyton Thompson had a big night, 179 yards and a touchdown. You mentioned Nick Houston, 52 yards and a touchdown, including that. Well, I guess it was that game winner. Andrew Way, 51 yards and a touchdown. So, this Titan team, as you can hear my cat, this Titan team has been really, really impressive and continues to be that top contender to Princeton, I think.
Yeah. Did you mention, Kewaunee efforts here? Alex Duarte, 160 yards and 2 touchdowns, and their quarterback Wellgate had 168 yards and a touchdown. Talking to head coach Jeremy Adolphson, he was really impressed with what Kewaunee does. And I think that, they're sitting at 1-2 right now, but there's some wins left out on their schedule. I think things are trending upward for the Boilermakers. We'll talk about them at the end of the show as well. But what a matchup here. What a battle between, I think, what are going to be, potentially 2 playoff teams. Certainly with Monmouth Roseville off to a 3-0 start, but I think Kewaunee has that chance too.
Yeah, well, we talked a lot about, special teams in that Sterling game. We talked about it last week in the Rockridge Princeton game and how kind of crucial it is. And look at this game, a 3-point game, but you've got Ivan Godina for Monmouth Roseville, 3 for 3 on his extra points and a 24-yard field goal at the end of the first half. And lo and behold, that's the difference. So it's those little parts of the game that make a huge difference. So the Titans use that to their advantage and get the win here.
Yep. Shout out to Jim Taylor. He always points out the importance of special teams, and you see it play out right there. So there you go.
That's right.
Princeton gets the win 60-0 over Sherrard. Per Kevin Schlum, Princeton had 19 offensive plays in the first half, and they scored on 6 of them. So fast, explosive start for the Tigers. This one was over quickly. A great effort from Princeton. They continue to roll along. Sherrard's struggling right now. They're dealing with some injuries, and, this one just wasn't their night, but Princeton continues to look good.
Yeah, I Princeton might still be without Noah Laporte too. So, it's the names we call every week for Princeton that continue to do a great job week in and week out. Ace Christensen, and the like. So yeah, great win for Princeton here as they, as you said, continue to roll on.
Casey Etheridge, I'm sure in on the mix there. So yep. Overall, great effort. One more game. Spring Valley Hall gets the big 62-27 win over Mendota. Mendota actually held a 21-20 lead in this one before Hall scored 6 straight touchdowns. So nice game from players like Dylan Glynn, Braden Curran, Aiden Redcliffe. That's a much needed win for first-year head coach Larson out there for the Spring Valley Hall team that, they were getting maybe not desperate, but they were hungry for a win. They were ready for one. So this is a nice win for that program. Let's look at week 4. Monmouth Roseville goes on the road to Mendota, Princeton at Kewaunee, and Spring Valley Hall at Sherrard. I mean, I think the game that stands out to me, it's the rivalry. It's for the big old trophy. It's Princeton at Kewaunee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big time rivalry game there. Certainly Princeton has shown that they have no intention of giving up the crown or slowing down anytime soon. But again, really impressed with Kewaunee and their efforts against Monmouth Roseville. So they get that game at home in a rivalry game. Anything can happen. Look at Spring Valley Hall, right? They're sitting at 1-2. The game against Sherrard that I would say is winnable for Hall, and they could be sitting at 2-0 in the conference after this one. So, I think with Princeton and Kewaunee, we'll know if Kewaunee, can overtake Princeton, but in the end, I'm not quite sure that they'll have the firepower to do it. So, should be a pretty easy week 4 in terms of thinking who's going to win, but you never know. That's why you play the game.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, let's keep moving down the way here. Let's talk about the Lincoln Land large school side of things. Farmington gets the win 42-18 over Decatur St. Teresa. Lane Wheelwright, 266 yards, 5 touchdowns, another 128 rushing yards and a touchdown. Mitch, all right, here's another guy. We got to get a helmet out to Lane Wheelwright eventually, man. He's putting up some monster numbers.
That's every touchdown for Farmington in this game. So, yeah, he's had some highlight reel stuff through the first 3 weeks. So, again, a player who just does it so consistently. We expect that he'll have another performance similar to this again later this season. But Logan Hutt 95 yards again. So this Farmington team now they're moving up in that 3A rankings. I think I have them at number 2. I think in 3A right now. So they continue to play really, really well against certainly a Decatur St. Teresa team who is a state champion of old, but still a solid program. So good out of conference win for Farmington here.
Yep. All right. A few more games. We'll jump into conference play on the Lincoln Land Large side of things. Macomb gets the win, 21-6 over Illini West. So they stay undefeated on the season. The Bombers off to a great start. Mitch, give us the names here from Macomb in the win.
Yeah, the Bombers, Malachi Conley, Drake May, Drew Watson all scored. Braden Holdhouse, a name that we've called out a lot, threw for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, Macomb sitting there at undefeated at 3-0. So great win here and great conference win as well.
Yep. Another big conference win for Elmwood Brimfield. They get the win 71-36 over West Hancock. Mitch, I went into their stats looking for Bo Windish because he's been putting up such big numbers, and he didn't disappoint. 216 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he wasn't alone in this one. Then I see Matthew Glynn go for 277 and 4 touchdowns. So equal balance there from 2 great running backs, 2, helmet watch type of running backs there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no question as the Trojans go to 3-0. So great start to the season for Elmwood Brimfield.
Yep. A great win. Speaking of great wins and great starts, how about Princeville? They get the crossover win against Knoxville, 48-19. Mitch, this was a team that we were wondering in Princeville, how would they be able to handle themselves in this game, in this crossover against Knoxville, a team that was struggling a little bit. And man, they answered the call, and here they are. They're now sitting at 3-0. Jake Williams, 16 for 21, 249 yards passing and 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's throwing to Jet Benningfield and Hunter Johnson. Each of those guys Benningfield had 1 touchdown, Johnson had 2, and Eli Christensen had 91 yards rushing with a touchdown. Noah Geiger had 46 and a touchdown. But man, they're not just getting it done on offense. On the defensive side of the ball, they got some guys doing some work.
Yeah, Ethan Cunningham, 12 tackles on the night. Colin Lowry had 9. So this is just it's a consistent Princeville team. I mean, look at their scoring here in this game. 14 in the first quarter, 12 in the second, another 14 in the third, 8 more in the fourth. So this is a tough Princeville team. They've always been consistently around that 5-win mark. I think they're going to get past that this year, the way that they've been playing. So to be 3-0, they still have some big games coming up this year, but this is a great start for them.
Big game coming up this week in week 4 that we'll talk about. Talking to coaches around the LLC, they have been really impressed with Jake Williams, what he does at the quarterback position for Princeville. Great dual threat guy. You can see, obviously, he can throw the ball, 5 touchdowns. He can run the ball when needed. So they're a balanced attack, a balanced offense. They're playing good overall football right now, sitting at 3-0. Bureau Valley gets the win, 46-16 over LVC. It's their first LLC win. They had a crossover win against United to start the season, but it's their first conference win within their division. Brady Hartz, 131 total yards and 4 touchdowns. Bryce Helms, 2 touchdown passes and a touchdown run. And again, they're not alone on the offensive side of the ball. They got defense getting the job done as well.
Yeah, Helms and Tice Berkman both had 11 tackles in this game. So like you said, great win for Bureau Valley to get their first win here in this side of the LLC. And yeah, the names that we were excited about at the beginning of the year, guys that came back from last year, certainly Helms, 2 touchdown passes and a TD run, like you mentioned. Great win for the Storm.
Yeah, so Bureau Valley now sitting at 2-1. So good start for them. they'll have to play their best football on Friday as they go on the road to Farmington. So tough matchup for them in this one, as Farmington, as we've said, is playing really well. West Hancock is on the road at Macomb. Lewistown is at Knoxville. Illini West at South Fulton, and Elmwood Brimfield at Decatur St. Teresa. For the second week in a row, an LLC team taking on Decatur St. Teresa. Mitch, what game you like here? What stands out to you?
I think it's that one. I think is Elmwood Brimfield for real? Can they go on the road and then beat a good Decatur St. Teresa team, who if I remember correctly, was held Farmington close early in that game before Farmington kind of took over. But Elmwood Brimfield certainly has the power, the firepower to do the same. If I had to pick another game, look, LVC and Knoxville both having tough starts to the year. Yep. Certainly one team is going to get their first win this week. So if that can propel them to get back on the right track, we'll see if that comes to fruition. But as you mentioned, it's an intriguing game with Farmington and Bureau Valley. It's just Farmington has maybe a little too much firepower for Bureau Valley in this one, but hey, they got great players. They're coming off of a big win, so we'll see if Bureau Valley can keep it close with the Farmers.
Yep. I look at, West Hancock, they can put up some points. Can they do enough to maybe knock off Macomb? Macomb's playing really good football right now, and they're going to be at home. But I also look at Illini West and South Fulton, and like you said, that Lewistown and Knoxville, somebody's going to get their first win of the year. Somebody's going to build a little momentum there. So that Illini West team has, played tough. They played tough against Macomb last week. Can they use that to grab this win here against South Fulton? So let's get into the LLC small division. Stark County gets the big win, 40-16 over A-Town. Rebels jump out to a 33-0 lead before A-Town tacked on a couple fourth quarter touchdowns. But overall for the Rebels, great win here. Nolan Orwig, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was 1 yard short of having his 4th touchdown, took the handoff from the 8-yard line. A-Town knocks the ball loose as he nears the goal line. It rolls into the end zone before Cole Kinsella is there to dive on it. Shout out to Kinsella. It feels like we read his name every week, leading this Rebels team in tackles. He once again had 8 tackles on the night, diving for a loose ball for a touchdown. That's just that kind of player you want right on your team. He's doing all the things. Coach Nord talked him up as a huge part of what they do defensively. So you got to love a kid like that, right? Getting the job done, being the heartbeat of that defense.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy who just gives you 100% every single play. So, this is a Stark County team coming off of a 1-point win last week against Illinois Wethersfield, an upstart A-Town team. We can get into this later. I'm looking at Stark County's schedule with who they've got left. I don't know if we've answered everything with ROWA Williamsfield yet. We certainly know what Princeville can do, but they also had the 1-point win against Savannah, maybe a little bit of a lucky win there. I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm wondering, Greg, I'll ask you, I'll put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
I guess it would be a push or an under at 9 wins for Stark County.
Oh, man.
I'll take the pressure off you. I think it's a push because I'm looking at what Stark County has left and how they've played so far. I think they're going to go undefeated for the second year in a row.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously the stretch of back-to-back games between ROWA, Williamsfield, and Princeville. When you play them in back-to-back games, the first one's at home against ROWA Williamsfield. The second one, you go on the road to Princeville. That could be a tough stretch. But and
look, maybe it's a hot take at 3 weeks in. I get that. I think that just the consistency that they've played with, and they've got games against three pretty quality opponents already behind them, and they've won them all.
Yep.
I think the odds are better that they could be set at 9-0 once again at the end of week 9.
All right, I love it.
That's what we bring to the show.
All right. How about a quick uni note here?
I would love one.
A-Town has a new yellow helmet with their tornado logo on it. So for years they had a AT on the side. It was a white helmet, or it was a black helmet years back. Then it went to a white helmet with the AT on it. Now it's their tornado logo. Looks pretty good. They got all black home uniform with yellow numbers and dark green trim. I also saw they had some yellow pants the other night. So
Okay.
overall, they've always had a pretty good look, and this is another good look for them. So just wanted to get a quick uni note in there.
Yeah, you sent me this picture. It's a great look. So yeah, shout out to A-Town for being up on their aesthetics game.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Mitch, you asked me, you put me on the spot about could Stark County go undefeated. I think the one team that you got to watch for, well, obviously I said Roval Williams Field and Princeville, but I'm looking at Roval Williams Field. They get the win 42-36 over United in overtime. I think this is, we'll talk about this game, then we'll get into it. But Drake DeJanes, 98 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 110 yards rushing and a touchdown. Jack Cordell, 186 yards rushing, a touchdown, 4 tackles. Talon Hull, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 tackles, 3 for loss, interception, punt block. What didn't that guy do? He did a little bit of everything there. So
that's helmet watch worthy.
So yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to say Roval Williams Field's at 3-0, but they've been in some tough battles here, right? They went into overtime here against United. We've talked about Roval Williams Field's schedule at the start of this season. We said there was the opportunity to start fast. They've answered. They're sitting at 3-0. Maybe it hasn't been these overall, big wins, like these flashy point totals, but I think this is a group that's kind of learning their way around, right? They had to replace some key pieces off a team a year ago. So it's a team that as they learn, as they gain that experience, they're winning these close games. So they're building that confidence. Mitch, they're a team to watch for. I like Stark County. I like what they're doing, but I think that battle between Roval Williams Field and Stark County is going to be a good one. I'm not committing. I'm being very non-committal here, but
all right, that's fine. No problem.
You put yourself on the line. I like it. I appreciate
that's
it.
Fine.
So
I'll tell you who's got one win, Greg, and that's Havana. They get their first win in,
that's right.
Let's see, 9, 11, 13 games. They get the 20-16 win over South Fulton. So yeah, they had a tough stretch last year going 0-9. They had lost their 2 final games the season before that, certainly the 2 games this season. So good for Havana. They were so close to getting that win over Princeville. Would have been a tremendous upset victory.
Yep.
But they've played tough all year. So good for the Ducks to get this win over South Fulton.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, it seems like a much improved Havana Ducks team this season. So, it's great after the heartbreak they had against Princeville. It's great to see them be rewarded with a victory here against South Fulton. One more game to get to. Rushville Industry gets the win 26-13 over Anawan Wethersfield. I think overall this score kind of surprised us a little bit. I think we'd heard a lot of good things about Rushville Industry, but they hadn't started. Let's see. They started the season with a loss to Stark County, and then they played a tough game in a win over United. So I didn't know really what to expect in this one. I think Anawan Wethersfield's banged up. I think that they're playing. They're getting some guys in some new positions and learning a little bit on the fly here. And credit to Rushville Industry for getting the win. But it's tough for Anawan Wethersfield because I think that there's just they're not at full strength right now.
Yeah, tough stretch for Anawan Wethersfield having to play Stark County and Rushville Industry. But now you've got 3 weeks, right? You've got Monmouth United, you've got A-Town, and you've got Havana. So you've got 3 weeks to kind of get back on the right track because their final 3 weeks are Farmington, Roval Williamsfield, and Princeville. So if Anawan Wethersfield is going to make that run, and they're probably one of the teams that we'll talk about here in a minute, they really have to figure it out here in the next 3 weeks because the last 3 weeks are going to be incredibly tough.
Yep. All right. Well, let's look at week 4, the week that is ahead of us. A-Town taking on Rushville Industry, South Fulton going up against Illini West, which we referenced, Havana going on the road to Stark County, Anawan Wethersfield at Monmouth United. And I think the game of the week here, on this LLC small school side of things. Roval Williams Field going up against Princeville. I think this is the one we may get some answers to. Who's going to be making their way up to the top of the standings or near the top of the standings?
Yeah, two undefeated teams thus far. And yeah, who you mentioned that Roval Williams Field's been battle tested. I would say that Princeville has as well. So yeah, I can't really predict this one. Looking back at last year, this was a Roval Williams Field win, 55-40. So it was a pretty high scoring game there. That was at Princeville last year, and so yeah, the Cougars have played really well. I think certainly at 3-0. It's not a huge huge take to say that they've played well, but this Princeville team just continues to be scrappy. So to put these two teams on the field and who can remain undefeated will certainly be, with where Annawan Wethersfield is, will certainly be that next contender up for Stark County.
Yep. I think you look at that, Rushville Industry has a chance to jump out to 3 wins here, be sitting at 3-1, after that loss in week 1 to Stark County. And overall, I think you look at Annawan Wethersfield looking to bounce back there. And again, the Princeville Roval Williams Field game, I think that when you look at the Cougars season, I think they're 3-0, but they had some opportunities to really put some teams away and maybe let them hang around a little longer, than they needed to. But either way, they were still coming away with wins. So I think that if they kind of learn, from those experiences on when they can really get that extra punch and really, put a team away, that could take this team to the next level. And they have a chance to, prove that. They have a chance to take this to the next level and have these kids, this team, this year's version of the Cougars really make a statement. And I think they could do that against Princeville. And obviously on the flip side, Princeville is looking to, break through that 5, win area, 4 or 5 wins that they've kind of hovered around over the last few years. So
yeah, usually they're scrapping to get to that 5th win. And so they would be sitting pretty good at 4-0 right away. So yeah, that'll be a great game.
Yep. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll jump into the Northwest Upstate Illini. The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com.
This is Dan Pearson of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Our FCA team of staff, board, and volunteers is pleased to support View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Our Northwest Illinois FCA team is 3 teams in 1, serving coaches and athletes in the 3 Rivers, Northern Illinois, and Greater Peoria areas, all with schools covered by View from the West. For more information, email me at danpearson@fca.org. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune into For Fantasy Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
Welcome back to View from the West podcast. Now talking Northwest Upstate Illini football. We got 2 teams undefeated here in the Northwest Upstate Illini after 3 weeks. One of them being Dupec. They get the win 46-0 over Dakota. Dermot Dolan, 6 carries, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mitch, do the math, 18.8 yards per carry. What an effort from him and an effort from the Rivermen. They're undefeated.
This was a great win. Certainly Dakota's having a down year, obviously. But Dupec doing everything right to be, we talk about contenders a lot, to be the next. I'm at a loss of words here, Greg. I want to think of something different to say other than that they're the top contender to the league win, but just again, they have so many weapons, right? Normally we're talking about Cooper Hoffman.
Yeah.
Normally we're talking about Cooper Hoffman or any one of their backs, but Dermot Dolan comes in, 6 carries, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So they've got the weapons to do it. So this was a great win for Dupec over Dakota. And they played Morrison in week 4. I think that's a pretty intriguing game, the way Morrison's coming off that Galesburg win. So I think we'll still learn more about Dupec, but a great win here.
Yeah, that's a good week 4 matchup. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the other undefeated team here at the top of the conference, I know you're shocked. Lena Winslow, 30-14 over Stockton. But this one was tight for a while.
Well, that's the thing. It shocked a little bit because it was. This was part of the Freaky Friday that Stockton. I can't remember if Stockton was leading at one point or it was just close. But
yeah,
I want to say it was, I don't know, 16-14 or
I think they were up
at one
early.
time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, and we talked about this with Kyle on the Instant Reacts that we've been really impressed with Stockton this year. They're young. They've got some changes on their coaching staff that they're getting a lot better in the strength and conditioning department. And so I think they're really, really playing well. One of the best young teams that we cover. Certainly in the gauntlet of the NUIC, not sure what their record is going to shake out to, but boy, if you can hang tight with Lena Winslow, you're doing a lot of things right. So kudos to the Blackhawks for playing well in this game. But as you mentioned, Lena Winslow, they're racking up the wins. They are the top team in 1A, depending on which rankings you look at. So they certainly fit the bill there.
Yep. Well, speaking of teams, looking to climb up the standings in the Northwest Upstate Illini, a team that's catching our eye this year, Galena. They get the win 19-18 over Forreston. This was a great game, Mitch. Give us the rundown on the 1-point victory for the Pirates.
Yeah, so it was low scoring for most of the game. Galena takes a late lead, 2 minutes left to play. But that was kind of a part of a stretch where there was 18 points scored in the final 3 minutes.
Oh, man.
So just a wild game here in week 3. And for this one was a bit of a surprise. I think maybe we thought Galena's win over Morrison in week 2 was more of Morrison not being impressive, but I think it was more of Galena was the better team. And that came to fruition here in week 3 too, to beat a good Forreston team. So Forreston had won 8 straight in this series until this game. So yeah, shout out to Galena and their well-balanced attack, versatile attack to get this win.
Yeah, I think for Galena, for the Pirates, I think this is a game that kind of validates that Morrison win, right? Like it shows you that now they have wins over Morrison and Forreston. Like that's two pretty good wins there on your NUIC resume. They got some more work to do. They're gonna have to win some games down the stretch, but this is a great start for the Pirates, and overall, just it's a thrilling game. It's a great win to get it for the Pirates.
Yeah, a thrilling game, and certainly we like that around here. So I think this one is worthy of our game of the week. View from the West game of the week is sponsored by Nate Neighbor of Modern Woodmen of America. From protection to savings to retirement, contact Nate Neighbor today to put together your financial game plan. He's always just a call away at 309-233-2656. Modern Woodmen, touching lives, securing futures.
Thank you again to Nate Neighbor for his sponsorship there. Great game, as we talked about, for Galena for their win. Couple more games to talk about. Eastland Pearl City gets the win 46-22 over Fulton. It's the first win in the series for Eastland Pearl City. This one kind of caught our eye, Mitch. I mean, we were interested in Eastland Pearl City and how good they were this year. How good can they be? And this is another statement type of win that it just makes the NUIC a crapshoot to try to predict. We'll talk about it down the way, but this is a great win for the Wildcats.
Yeah. I mean, seeing the scoring updates come in, and they were coming in fast. The first half was really, really impressive for EPC, but for them to come in and really put a beating on Fulton, that was a shock. So yeah, first win in the series for the Wildcats. Another impressive performance from their rushing game. Draven Zaire had 3 touchdowns. Jackson Kemple, who we talk about all the time, Adam Allender, we talked about before. Zaire had 3 touchdowns, ran for 210 yards. His second touchdown was 93-yard touchdown run. So yeah, this has been an EPC team that's been fun to cover this season so far.
Yeah. One more game to talk about in the NUIC. We already talked about it. Morrison got the win 31-14 over Galesburg. Mitch, did you have conversation with any former Mustang alums? Were people excited about this one or intrigued by this win for the Mustangs?
It looked like they had quite a few travelers to Galesburg, and I think it was kind of what we mentioned earlier in the show, just a lot of pride for a small school to go in and beat a larger school like that on the road. So yeah, a good win for Morrison here. They get back into NUIC play here in week 4. But we'll see if they can ride this momentum, because they'll need to get a couple more wins in their win column if they want to get back to the playoffs.
Yep. Well, like you referenced, they'll have a big matchup in week 4. Mustangs go on the road to Dupec. So if they're looking to make a statement, going on the road to Dupec, who's undefeated here in week 4, it would be quite the statement. Dakota takes on Lena Winslow. Forreston at Eastland Pearl City. Fulton plays Stockton, and Galena is going up against Fenimore, Wisconsin. So there you have it. I'm intrigued to see if Galena can keep things rolling. I don't know, admittedly, much about Fenimore, Wisconsin. I'll have to, maybe this is a way to plug Kyle Kampmeyer and NUIC football on YouTube. He'll put out a video later in the week on Wednesday or Thursday. He'll give you what you need to know, I'm sure, about Fenimore. So shout out to Kyle and his coverage of the NUIC. But, interested to see if Galena can keep that rolling. Man, that Fulton-Stockton game seems interesting to me. And Forreston at Eastland Pearl City.
Yeah, I mean, 4 of the 5 games are interesting. No disrespect to the Lena Dakota game, but I think we can tell where that one's going to go. But I think the rest of the 4 all have really good storylines. Can EPC keep it rolling against a Forreston team that's going to be hungry for a win? Fulton, Stockton, 2 teams that are still probably looking to prove themselves and to get another win. As you mentioned, Galena. We know anything about Fenimore. I think traditionally, though, the NUIC teams do fairly well against these Wisconsin teams. We certainly saw Stockton get a win earlier this year. But again, I don't know anything about Fenimore. And Morrison at Dupec. I can't imagine when the last time Morrison played Durand or Pecatonica in football.
Yep.
But certainly going to be a tough matchup for the Mustangs. But I also thought that about the Galesburg game. So again, can they take what they learned against a bigger school? If they have to do it again, Dupec's a bigger school than Morrison is. Maybe that experience, having played Galesburg and coming away with a win, will pay dividends for them in this game.
I will just say, week in and week out now, I don't know how to predict some of these games. It's tough, and that is a compliment to this conference. We talked about it the other day. I think that on the Instant Reacts, we talked about, I think even more so than in the last few years, there is really no dropout floor in this conference. Dakota's struggling. That's one team that's struggling, but otherwise there's going to be a 3-6 team that's going to miss the playoffs that, man, they could take on a lot of playoff teams, and they unfortunately won't get the chance to. And I don't know who that's going to be, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. You're going to have a team that's sitting at 4-5 or 3-6 that would probably stack up against most of that 1A bracket and then do fairly well. So, yeah, a testament to the conference. Just iron sharpens iron every single week. And then this week is certainly no different.
Yeah. Okay, Mitch, before we jump into 8-man football, we have a little game here to play. We'll tease ahead here. We'll talk about 0 or 1 win teams that we think still might have a path to the playoffs. So we'll get into that in a minute. So I think that kind of segues off of what we just talked about, but hold that thought on the 0 or 1 win teams that you think may still have a shot at the playoffs. Before we get into that, let's talk 8-man football. Amboy gets the win over Galva, 60-0. West Central gets the win, 62-38 over Peoria Heights. Ridgewood 30-7 over Flanagan Cornell Woodland. That's a big win for me, I think, for the Spartans. That's a nice win there. Bushnell Prairie City gets the win 36-8 over West Prairie. So Bushnell Prairie City wins the Iron Spike. And we talked about it on the Instant Reacts. Did the Iron Spike break? Is it broken? I hope it's fixed.
Yeah, heard it broke. Not sure the extent of the Iron Spike. Certainly, you hope for the trophy's sake that it's an easy repair. But hey, in a celebration, you can't fault anybody for that. So they'll get it back. No, they'll have it back in proper form soon.
There you go. South Beloit gets the win 54-12 over River Ridge. West Carroll gets the win 57-8 over Ashton Franklin Center. Polo gets the win 54-0 over Hiawatha. And Milledgeville gets the win 58-6 over Orangeville. In that one, Carson Francis had 5 touchdown passes. Spencer Nye had a touchdown run, a touchdown reception, and a fumble recovery for a touchdown. So doing a little bit of everything there is Spencer Nye.
Yeah. Milledgeville now over 200 points on the season and 3 games in. West Carroll not too far behind with 175, but shout out to Polo on the other side of the ball. They've only given up 8 points all year. So a lot of good things happening here in 8-man football.
Yeah, they are. Polo and Milledgeville are on a collision course. They play in, let's see, week 6. They play, it's going to be at Milledgeville. Ooh, maybe I'll have to find out what other games are going on out there. Maybe I'll have to go to that one. I've never been to a Milledgeville Polo game, Mitch. That'd be a fun one to go to.
Yep.
Is it the Blacktop
I would
rivalry?
say so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be a good one. All right. Well, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about week 4. Ashton Franklin Center taking on Polo. River Ridge up against Orangeville. Alden Hebron takes on West Carroll. Milledgeville versus Rockford Christian Life. Amboy at Bushnell Prairie City. So West Carroll looking to stay undefeated. Milledgeville and Polo and Amboy looking to stay undefeated. Those are the, I think the best teams in our area. A couple other games to watch for in 8-man football in week 4. Ridgewood will be hosting Peoria Heights, and West Central looks to remain undefeated. They will be on the road for the 4th week in a row, Mitch, if you remember their schedule correctly. They'll be on the road for the 4th week in a row, this time against Galva. They have one more road game, then they have 4 straight home games to end the season. So the most unique schedule we've ever seen continues there. But I think, like I said, when you start looking around, I think it's Milledgeville, it's Polo. They're on a collision course. Amboy is still, the number 1 team. They're still the favorite in 8-man football. Man, I want to keep following along. Where does West Carroll fit into the mix, right? Each week we're learning a little more about them. But as they get down the road and get a little more get tested, I want to see how they respond. That's an interesting storyline to follow along with for sure in 8-man football. All right. So here we are, Mitch. We teased it at the beginning of the show. We skipped by our viewpoints because I think we kind of want to have a little discussion, have a little fun here with the 0 or 1 win teams that still could have a path to the playoffs. So we compiled a list here of 1 win or teams that haven't won a game yet. Maybe let's talk through what we think their path is to the playoffs. We'll start in the Western Big 6. You got Sterling with 1 win. You also have United Township with 1 win. I think those 2 are what maybe I would say there's a chance. I don't know if it's likely, but there's a chance here. So let's talk through it. You got Sterling. They still got Galesburg, Beloit Turner in Wisconsin, who's 2-2, Geneseo, Quincy, Rock Island, Moline. It would be tough, but I don't think it's impossible for Sterling to pull this one off. They got a 2-2 Beloit team. So if you get your 2nd win against Galesburg, your 3rd win against Beloit, you'd have to get a win against Rock Island, a win against Geneseo.
I think that would be the route. It would have to be Galesburg, Beloit, Geneseo, and Rock Island. I think Quincy and Moline have shown too much this season so far. Obviously, we're only 3 weeks in, things can change. So, if the question is, do they have a path? Yes, I think Sterling has a path to get there. Will they get there? I don't know, but is it possible the way that Sterling's played? Yes, absolutely.
The other one to look at here, the other 1-win team that I think there's a window there, maybe, is United Township. Like we said, Geneseo, Quincy, Rock Island, Moline, Regis, and Galesburg. So you start looking at, they already got 1 win. If you get a win against Galesburg, you get a win against Geneseo, if you could pull that off this week. But then you still got to find a win. Let's see, Rock Island, and then like Regis, I think they're a pretty good team out of Wisconsin. There's a chance there. It's tough though.
Yeah, it's tougher than Sterling's, I think, but also again, still possible. I do think they'll match up well with Geneseo. I think they match up well with Rock Island and Galesburg. Admittedly, I do think that again, just like Sterling, that Quincy and Moline are probably better. But again, you never know. That's why you play these games. So again, is it possible? Yes. Is it harder than Sterling's? Yes, it is.
Yeah. Let's get into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. One team on the Mississippi side of things that I think they're 1 win right now, but they have a good chance to make a playoff push here. That's Kewanee. Sitting at 1 win. They got Princeton this week. Then they have Hall, Mendota, Sherrard, Newman, and Orion. So I think that, if you take away their stumble in week 1 against Erie Prophetstown in a game where Erie Prophetstown played really well, but that Kewanee team kind of, they didn't do themselves any favors. They had some self-inflicted, mistakes. I start looking, I think that's a tough team. I've heard people talk about, we've talked about Alex Duarte and the weapons they have. I think this is a path here for 5 wins.
I think so too. It'll probably look more daunting after this week because I do think Princeton will win that game. But sitting at just looking ahead, right? If Kewanee is sitting at 1-3 following this game, you've got games against Hall, Mendota, and Sherrard right there. I think those are 3 wins for Kewanee. That gets them to 4. Newman, the way Newman's been playing, I don't see it right now. I could see Kewanee being or getting better when that matchup comes in week 8. And then if Newman were still to win that game, Kewanee would have one more chance against Orion, which I would give the advantage to Kewanee. So yes, I do think Kewanee has a very favorable route here left to get to 5.
All right. So a couple teams on the Rock side of things then. You got a 1 win Riverdale right now and a 1 win Orion. We'll look through Rock, Riverdale first. Mercer County, Orion, Erie Prophetstown, Newman, Hall, Sherrard. Brian Stocking called it out. He said that Riverdale is going to go to the playoffs. So if they're going to go, they already got 1 win. They would need to get, I think, a win over Sherrard and Hall. Then you got Orion, Erie Prophetstown, or Mercer County. That gets you to 5. I think one of the big X Factor games becomes Orion, because Orion will be in the same spot fighting for, their playoff lives here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Hall and Riverdale will match up well in week 8. It could come down to that for maybe Riverdale, maybe not Hall so much, but maybe for Riverdale. But it'll be tight. It'll be just like we talked about with UT. Is there a path for Riverdale? I still think so. It's much, much harder than Kewanee's is.
Yep, I would agree. And I would say Riverdale and Orion are about in the same situation. It's possible. Yeah. There's a path there, but I think it's pretty hard for either one of those teams. They'd have to, pull off some wins, and we'll see what they can do. Let's get into the Lincoln Land, some schools to watch for here. Illini West, here's another one. I think like Kewanee, I think there's a path here. They have 1 win now. They got a South Fulton, Lewiston, Knoxville, Bureau Valley, West Hancock, and Tuscola. So where do the wins fall here? If you say, if you're looking for 5, Illini West has 1, South Fulton would be 2, Lewistown, then you start talking like West Hancock.
Let me make it easy on you. I think Illini West could win all of these.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
I think of the teams that we've talked about so far, the 5 or 6 teams we've talked about, this is the easiest. I think Illini
you think it's
West
easier?
is,
You think this one's easier than Kewanee even?
yeah.
I think Kewanee's the one that stood out to me as the
Kewanee's still got Princeton and Newman. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
They could get to 5. Now they could get, there's 4 games in there that they get to 5 pretty easily, I think. But I think even Illini West, in terms of a 6-game stretch, I think is the easiest.
Okay, there you go.
I don't know what Tuscola has this year. I mean, normally they're pretty good. I don't know what they've got, but I've been impressed with Illini West despite the 1-2 record. But then you've got 0-3 South Fulton, 0-3 Lewiston, 0-3 Knoxville. Right there's 4 wins. You get to 4 wins right away, and then you got a BV, West Hancock, and Tuscola to get 1. Yeah, I think Illini West is going to do it.
Okay. Well, we talked about Knoxville, and yes, they're a 0-win team right now, but it's still Knoxville. You know, like I don't think we can sleep on them just quite yet. They have Lewiston, Bureau Valley, Illini West, West Hancock, Fulton, and Farmington. Now, Fulton's another team that's kind of a wild card right now. We don't it's going to be a non-conference game for them. We don't know exactly what to expect there after this last week's results. Farmington, we know what we're going to get out of them. So then you start looking at, Lewiston, Bureau Valley, West Hancock. But I think Bureau Valley could get the win here. I think Bureau Valley's a good team. I think Bureau Valley could get the win, like you said, over Illini West, but Illini West has other games in their schedule that they could win. So this stretch for Knoxville will be tough.
Yeah, this might be the first one I say that I don't see it. Especially sitting with 0 wins.
Yeah.
And then say they win the next 4. Then you've got to finish with Fulton and Farmington, which I wouldn't favor Knoxville in either one of those games. So I think this is the first one of all the teams that I would say definitively, I don't believe there is a path for Knoxville to get to 5, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it'll be Fulton on the road, so I think that factors into it as well. All right. You have Anawan Wethersfield, who I'll be honest, did not think would be in this conversation, but they're 1 win. Here's what they got left: United, A-Town, Havana, Farmington, Roval Williamsfield, and Princeville. So those last 3 are really tough. First three are manageable, are, potential there, but that only puts you at 4 wins. So they got to get a win late in the season against Farmington, Roval Williamsfield, or Princeville. And now,
and if they're healthy, which we don't know the status, not going to speculate on that. If they're healthy, I think they win all 6.
Yeah.
If they're not, that makes it a little bit harder. Even with some injuries or current roster, I think they'll win these next 3. They'll be at 4. Then you've got Farmington, which even at full strength, I would probably still have Farmington there. And it gets a bit of a more toss-up if it's Roval Williamsfield and Princeville, if Anawan Wethersfield is full strength. So again, that is the key for them to get back into these playoffs, because if they can sneak in at 5 and 4 and they're fully healthy and going into the playoffs at 5 and 4, that's a pretty tough team if they're full strength at 5 and 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should mention that, it's become more likely. We saw it last year with Sterling. It's become more likely that a team can get in at 4 wins. So there was a handful of teams that got in with 4 wins a year ago. So, as we're doing this exercise, we're counting to 5, but some teams could sneak in with 4. It just kind of depends on, where things fall. But all right, Mitch, 1-win teams in the Northwest Upstate Illini. This is a crapshoot. It's really hard to predict this, but here we go. Fulton has Stockton, Dakota, Galena, Dupec, Knoxville, Morrison. Are there 4 games in there? This conference is so hard to predict. I'm going to say,
I think there's 3.
Okay.
That I can say for sure that I would favor Fulton in. I think if they're going to get there, they have to beat Stockton.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yep.
I think they have to beat Stockton. And then that makes it, they would need 3 wins out of Dakota, Galena, Dupec, and Morrison. I don't think they'll beat Dupec, but I think that there would be 3 wins between Dakota, Galena, Knoxville, and Morrison there for Fulton. But they have to beat Stockton this week to do that.
Yep. How huge does that week 9 matchup with Morrison look? I mean, just as things play out here.
I mean, the more we look at this exercise, it might not mean a lot. I mean, truthfully, I don't know. It's so hard to predict, like you mentioned.
But don't you think there's a chance that both of them are sitting at potentially 4 wins, looking for 5?
I don't think so. I don't think it'll come down to that.
Okay,
maybe one of them, not both of them.
Okay, so let's get into Morrison then. Morrison has Dupec this week, Forreston, Dakota, Stockton, Eastland, Pearl City, and they end with Fulton. So again, this Morrison team kind of hard to predict.
Right. I mean, truthfully, outside of Dakota, what game would you put them as a solid favored team? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just right now. We're 3 weeks in. It's not to say that they won't put up a huge fight against Dupec, and your season outlook looks a lot better for Morrison going into the Forreston game, right? But the way that just look at their last 3, Stockton, EPC, and Fulton, 3 tough teams that Morrison might stack up well against, but would they be a solid favorite in those 3? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think that week 9 game between Morrison and Fulton will be a winner gets in sort of thing. It could be for one of them, but I don't think both of those teams will be sitting at 4 wins going into that game.
Okay. All right. Which is crazy, right? So you think one of those teams is going to be one of those non-playoff teams potentially, and very good team, that will be left at home. That's crazy to think, because I would not have anticipated that going into the season, but it's just a gauntlet. It's hard. I think when you look at Forreston, I think it's pretty simple. You got Eastland, Pearl City, Morrison, Stockton, Hazel Green, Wisconsin, last 2 games of the year, Dupec and Lena Winslow. I think you have to win the next 4, right?
Yeah, certainly gotta beat EPC this week to have a shot at it. I would favor Forreston over Morrison. That would get you to 3. Stockton and Forreston should be a really fun matchup. But yeah, you'd have to do it in the next 4 weeks, because I do not believe that Forreston will. I would not favor them against Dupec or Lewin.
Yeah. Yep. All right. What about Stockton? I think that's the other one that's just it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out here. Fulton, Eastland, Pearl City, Forreston, Morrison, Dakota, Galena. That's what they got left. So you start doing the math here. Are they a favorite against Fulton?
I could see. I think there's 2 games that they're favored in.
Yep.
And I think it's the same thing we just talked about with Fulton. If you're going to do it, you got to win this week. So I think, as much as we were talking about Morrison and Fulton in week 9, I think it's Fulton and Stockton in week 4 that is the bigger story. So looking at it, I would say the easiest path is Stockton.
I kind of thought so too when I was looking through it.
They don't have Dupec. They don't have Lewin.
Yep.
All three of the other teams, Fulton, Forreston, and Morrison, all still have Dupec. Only Forreston has Lewin, but I out of the 4, I think Stockton's is the most manageable, and they could be that team that sneaks in.
Yep, I agree. And when you start looking at Stockton, maybe what I was talking about with Morrison and Fulton in week 9, maybe it'll end up being Stockton and Galena in week 9.
Yeah, that's a good call. Mm-hmm.
Yep, where they're playing for maybe that.
But no matter what I say, no matter what you or I say, Morrison could be the playoff team, and I would say, yeah, that makes sense. It's crazy. It's just, we can only kind of look at what we've got, but anything can happen. And I know that that's cliche, but like in the NUIC, that truthfully is, because you have so many teams. You have let's say 5 teams that are so evenly matched. Those games are truly toss-ups, and that's what makes this particular exercise in this conference so incredibly tough, because any one of these 4 teams that we just talked about could make it. And we're trying to pick one. It's a needle in a haystack type of thing. So, but just on paper, 3 games in, I think Stockton's path is the easiest. I would say Fulton is the second. So whoever wins this game in week 4, I think is sitting in the driver's seat to get to 5.
Yep. So let's recap there. Stockton and Fulton, I would agree. This is a huge matchup in week 4. Those two have a path here for a playoff appearance. Looking back at the LLC, Illini West, we think has a pretty good path here. They're sitting at 1 win now, but there's wins left on their schedule. Anawan Wethersfield is another team on the small side of things. I think there's a path there, and a lot of it hinges on, kind of figuring out some personnel, whether that's players returning from injury or just players getting comfortable in their new roles potentially. I think there's potential there with a lot of talent on that Titans team. Kewanee, that was the team that stuck out to me. I think they have a path. They're at 1 win now. I think they have a path. And we looked at Riverdale and Orion. I think their path goes through each other. I think that if one of those teams wants to be a playoff team, they have to beat the other one. Orion and Riverdale becomes a matchup against each other, and then the rest of it would have to shake out. They'd have to get some other wins along the way. But
I think we need to redo this exercise in 2 weeks.
Okay.
I think after week 5. After week 5, when we have 4 games left in the year, I think the picture will be a little bit clearer, because some of these teams are going to play each other and we'll know more about them. But I think we revisit this in a couple weeks, and our answers will probably be different, honestly. But I think in these next 2 weeks for all these teams, I think that's going to be the answer as to whether they get to 5 or not, is going to be determined in not only this week, because I think this week will answer that question for a lot of teams, but let's give it 2 weeks and revisit.
I think we absolutely can do that. We'll shine up the crystal ball and start, looking into.
And that'll be, the halfway mark. Yep. And so we can have a little more fun with that too.
Yep.
Embrace debate amongst you listeners, because it's part of the fun, right?
Yep.
But yeah, boy, we're in the thick of it now in these games. So a lot of fun, always fun.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone who listens. Thank you, Mitch. We'll talk to you next week. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.